everyone. Welcome back to the Black and Corporate Executive Coffee Chats podcast. We have an amazing guest today. I'm super excited to get into our conversation with him. Today, we're joined by Mr. Anton Vincent, the current president of Mars Wrigley North America. This organization is one that has brought us some of the world's favorite candies and snacks, including Skittles, Twix, M&Ms, and Double Mint gum, as well as pet care brands such as Pedigree and Whiskas. Mars Wrigley is ranked 83 on the Fortune 500 list and is recognized as one of the best companies to work for by Fortune 500. Anton leads the founding sector of the brand with nearly 30 years of consumer packaged goods experience. He is trademarked for his charismatic leadership and vision, amongst other traits. In addition to his role at Mars Wrigley, he also serves on the board of International Paper. Anton is a Jackson, Mississippi native, and he attended Sam Houston University, where he received his BBA in finance. He went on to also obtain his MBA from Indiana University. Let us please welcome Anton.
Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to this conversation with you and your audience.
Yes. Okay. Awesome. So, in true fashion of Black and Corporate, we always start with an icebreaker. So I'm going to do that right now, and it'll be a speed round. We're doing because this should go quickly as far as this episode. So I've shortened our speed round to 5 questions.
Okay, cool. Very good.
All right, here we go.
Yeah.
Mondays or Fridays?
Oh, Fridays.
Argyle or Stripes?
Stripes.
Okay. Mission, current company objectives and way of addressing them, or vision, the problem that the company eventually hopes to solve?
Vision, definitely.
Current cooking or food delivery?
Food delivery.
And this will segue into your current industry, gum or mint?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I like both of them. I'll probably use gum more. How about that?
Okay, yes.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again. You did that one with flying colors, so appreciate you going through that lightning round so quickly. I do want to just flash a little Black and Corporate paraphernalia I have on.
Nice.
That's why I have on a hoodie, because usually I'm in business casual, but we just launched our apparel online, so t-shirts and things. So I just wore this for that.
Great.
All righty. So let's get into it. Obviously, you hold a substantial leadership role at a very impactful company, huge, very recognizable with the brand and things of that nature. And it took you time to get here. So I want to dial back to the beginning. And how did you start? As you were growing up, what were the things you were hearing, seeing? What were your influences that inspired you and, kind of make up the nub of your character today?
Yeah, a really good question, Taylor. I think the thing for me is, I just got to say I had some wonderful parents. My parents were educators, everything from early childhood to teaching doctoral students. And so education was always not just an expectation, but a requirement in our household. And my parents were very, very firm about that. My parents were very loving, but very disciplined as well. And that was reflective of the community. My parents and their contemporaries grew up fighting for our civil rights in the 50s and 40s, 50s, 60s, so on and so forth. So by the time I came along, when I was born, my parents didn't have the right to vote. They were still fighting. And the Civil Rights Act of 1965, so a year later, was passed. And so I also come from an expectation of advocacy and of community as well. And so I think those things were really instilled in me in very early in age. I would say that, as a youngster and having parents and a community that had that, we always had the expectation that, our parents and grandparents, paid the price and fought the fight for us to have opportunity. And so, there was high accountability for achievement. And so I would say that I have a super high achievement orientation, from everything from sports to, academics to pretty much anything I decided to put my mind on. I want to try to be the best. And I grew up around people who had the same orientation as well, regardless of our circumstance, being in the Deep South at the time that we were, sort of coming of age as well. So I think those are things that have really hardened me. And I think that's sort of the foundation of who I think I am and try to reflect in life.
Yeah. Wow. That's interesting. Definitely a pivotal time in the world, in the country, especially. So that's interesting. And yeah, that is a big fuel. I can see how that sustains you, even to this day. I want to ask about education. You said education was big. So what were you went to Sam Houston University. So how did you know to go there? How did you know to major in finance? What were kind of the conversations you had with your parents as they were in education to even venture out to the world of finance?
Yeah, really good question, because I was growing up. I was athlete all my life. Most of my adult life, I played basketball in college, and so I was very focused. Like a lot of kids who have talent, trying to get to the league, right? But I didn't get the kind of D1 offers that I wanted, and so most people don't know, but I went to junior college my first couple of years. I played basketball and wanted to try to get better offers, and ended up at Sam Houston State University, and had a very successful athletic career. And I'd always had an inclination to math and business and things like that. It came easy to me. I enjoyed it. And like I always tell people a lot, I didn't grow up in a town where there was a lot of wealth at all. And so like a lot of kids, you want what you don't have, or you want what you don't see, or you want what you see elsewhere. And so the world of finance and the world of investments, had always sort of intrigued me. And so, I can still remember in high school sort of reading the Wall Street Journal. I probably understood half of it at the time, but I knew that's where the information was, because that's what I saw other people read. But so I think that helped to inform me. So, it was a really good mix of, living a sort of a hardcore, sort of deep African-American experience, beautiful community, and with high expectations, and just still trying to sort of figure out what does that look like. And so my parents have always encouraged me and my four brothers to, to reach out, to branch out, to go get it. That was our orientation, because most of them both my parents are from rural areas in Mississippi, and, sort of migrated to Jackson for college. But I always encouraged us to, to really to branch out and to make sure to go wherever our talents could take us.
Yeah. And I want to ask a little bit more about that experience, because, college leads you into full-time roles. Yeah. And obviously you had to have a foundation that worked so that you can keep springboarding into other roles and, ultimately here. So I'm curious as to if you had internship experiences, if you just picked up, experiences on your own, you were scrappy and figured out how to patch some stuff together. How did that work? Like you said, since you were getting out and going out and getting it. And I'm going to venture to say that the internet wasn't as,
you can date me, Taylor.
It wasn't, so easy to access. If at all back then. So what were you doing?
Yes, I my college experience predated the internet, and thank God that it did. Especially social media. But yeah, it's interesting. As a Division I athlete, I had rules and regulations really what I could and couldn't do. And so for many of us at that time, we were training in the off season, and we would get little odd jobs here and there. But we spent the summer, playing in summer leagues and training and preparing for the next season as well. And so I actually did not have an opportunity to do internships in college. But I will say, and I have a lot of conversation with athletes and all the sort of paid college players, so on and so forth. But I did take advantage of, coming around a lot of people, who had, students' best interests at heart. And my parents would tell you, my brothers would tell you, I'm a big question answer. I have a high level of curiosity. And so I took advantage of it and asked people questions, asked them what they did, helped them give me some, understanding around what they did. And, if for some reason that professional basketball didn't work out, what are the opportunities? So I felt like I made up in what an internship probably could have offered me, just in terms of my own individual question asking and sort of personal networking as well. And so just tried to use my athletic platform to build relationships, to build understanding, and sort of position myself when I came out of school, to try to do big things. Yeah.
Okay. I like that. Curiosity seems to be definitely a driver for success anyway. So the fact that, you were having that blossom while you were still doing your sports is pretty cool. Yeah. So you started out not in CPG. You started out, was it Verizon? Was it the first company?
Not what, yeah, it's what is now Verizon, but it was MCI Telecommunications. So okay. I'll give you the story. I actually started out, this is maybe one of the more interesting stories. My very first job out of college, you can't do this today, but I sold insurance door to door in Dallas, Texas. I really did. And at that time, you could sell a lot of things door to door, and it wasn't dangerous like it probably could be today. But yeah, that was my very first job. And long story short, we had a guy that was running the office that essentially ripped all of us off, and so that wasn't long lasting. But I'd always wanted to be in the financial services area, and I was fortunate enough, literally right after that, to get an interview with Fidelity Investments, which was actually the largest mutual fund company in the world at the time, and was successful. And essentially, the way they did it then, they sort of brought on a lot of finance types like me for the tax season. And we made it through the tax season, and we could sit for our Series 7 broker's license. And so that's what I went on. And that happened to be October of 1987. And if you know your financial history, my first day on the floor, if you would, was Black Monday, October 1987. And so it was a pretty historic time. And that lasted about 3 months. So they ended up laying most of us off because it was a tough time in the financial services industry, and a lot of regulations changed as a result of the crash. And that's when I became familiar with MCI Telecommunications. I always sort of fashioned it as the Google of its day in the telecommunications space, because it was essentially built to compete against AT&T, which had a 80-year legal monopoly in the United States at that time period. And MCI was suing to get what we call open access to a broad array of telecommunication services.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, that's an interesting jump.
Yeah.
How did you stumble upon that? I know you said you got to know it, but what was that process of getting to know the company?
Well, I think it was a function of the location I was in, because Dallas continues to be a very high growth area and diversifying its industry after the industry had gone down in Texas. And telecommunications at that time, we used to call Dallas Telecom Alley, and so most of the large telecommunications companies, Sprint, MCI, AT&T, all the small ones, had really big operations hubs there. Mostly in an area we call Plano, which is North Dallas. And so the area was really booming as it relates to telecommunications and telecommunications services as well. They also happen to have had large regional customer service centers there as well, so call centers. And so in Fidelity Investments, and like in most financial service centers, those are essential call centers that are supporting financial operations. And so MCI happened to have one of the largest customer service centers there. And so since I had a lot of call center experience from Fidelity, people like, wow, well, you know how to do the work. And that's how I got into it, and was able to take that and parlay it into going into a pretty interesting group in DC, which was where the corporate headquarters were, which was creating a new service line, essentially a startup within MCI. And so that was really intriguing. I was in what we call the quality analyst area, but I sat between marketing and between engineering. So marketing and engineering worked together to come up with service products. And then it was my job to actually make it all work between the network and ensuring that we connected with marketing and we can provision services and things of that nature. So, it was a bit of everything. And so I learned a lot of the value chain as it relates to telecommunications. But the thing that really got my attention was the marketing. That's where I really got introduced to brand marketing in particular, because the gentleman that I was working with was the brand manager for the MCI card. So prior to the internet and prior to cell phones, the only way you can make a call outside of your home was either through a payphone or we call a calling card. That's how you access the network, if you would, to sort of make a call. And so he ran, which was a huge business, by the way. And so he ran that and really just educated me on everything it took to create the concept, to provision the concept, and to go and drive customers and sales and things of that nature. And so I just thought the diversity of that, I'm like, that's what I want to do. And so he literally guided me in terms of what I need to do to go back to grad school and so on and so forth. So I really thank him to this day. His name is Fred Leftrick, by the way. So if anybody who knows Fred from way back, he was just an outstanding guy.
Nice. Okay. So that really hit you to, I guess, career advancement. Like, is that when you kind of fashion what your path would be, or at least what you wanted your path to be in an organization?
Yeah, I think when I went back to business school and learned about, you obviously got educated, and I was fortunate to have an internship at Kraft, one of the largest CPG companies in the world at the time. And I think that internship cemented that that's what I wanted to do. Is certainly with the first part of my career, sort of coming out of grad school. And I just think that, the beauty of being able to have the highly creative side of marketing, but also have high accountability from a P&L and a financial management side. I just think the combination of those two things would really appeal to me. Not just in interest, but also in terms of my capability, because I felt like I was multidimensional and had a lot to offer on both sides. and found a path and a profession that I thought that I could apply that and, hopefully be good at it. That was my thinking at the time.
Mm-hmm. So I do want to go dial back a little bit because you're in Dallas. Now you're from Mississippi.
I am, yeah.
Jackson, Mississippi. So what was that move like? Why didn't you go back? And, why did you plant seeds in Dallas? And how was that process? As you say, you grew up deep, in the South, and it seems that you're family oriented. So how did you manage that when you were not coming back home after college?
Yeah, I think it's a couple of things. It goes back to what we talked about earlier. Our parents always encourage us to go get opportunity. And so our parents never pushed us to stay at home, to stay around them. They just said, hey, look, you need to go where your opportunity can take you. And so I think me and my four brothers are really wired that way. And then, when I played ball in Texas. Hammond State is in Huntsville, Texas, about an hour north of Houston. And so I was already in Texas. I actually had an older brother that lived in Dallas that was in the banking sector at the time. And so, I moved to Dallas. I probably had a few dollars in my pocket and end up, living with him for a year. I slept on his floor for a year because he was hardcore. He was like, you're either going to pay rent or you're going to sleep on the floor. So which one do you want to do? I said, I'll take the floor. but it was great. It was great because I had a roof over my head. But he was trying to teach me. This is my oldest brother at the time, so he was teaching me discipline as well. It's like, hey, look, if you want things in life, you got to sacrifice. And so I appreciate him for that. And as soon as I got enough money to get out of that apartment and get my own apartment, I did that. And I was thankful for that as well. So it's just chasing my dreams as a college athlete. Landed me in Texas. I was fortunate to be be close to a large metropolitan area like a Houston or a Dallas. And so I think it was fortuitous from that perspective.
Yeah. I was trying to get to the point of like, did you feel there was not opportunities for you back home? I know I'm from Chicago, and a lot of my peers, they're like, oh, we're getting out of the city. We're not staying here. We got to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
I
think, and when you're in sort of a rural state or a small town, the opportunities can be limited. They really can. And I think for Jackson, it had the type of opportunities I had, but it didn't have the type of things that interested me and the things I thought that could advance my career. I have a lot of friends who are in a lot of professions, and a lot of them stayed home and have wonderful careers, wonderful lives. But that for what I wanted to do and sort of where life took me, that was just never an opportunity for me as well. And so, I've often entertained dreams of moving back, but I just, in my career, I just never had the opportunity, sort of to do that as well. But love my hometown, represent my hometown wherever I go, and very proud of the community that I came from. It means a lot to me, and it is a lot of who I am today.
Yeah, I think it's pretty cool. My mom's parents are from Mississippi, so Biloxi. And they say Chicago, Black people from Chicago are just Mississippi people with coats.
Yeah, well, in Mississippi we call Chicago North Mississippi, so it's right up Highway 55. You'd be there in like 12 hours. So
they came up during the Great Migration.
During the Great Migration, yes.
I would have been just like you,
exactly.
From Mississippi if they hadn't. Yeah,
exactly.
Yes, that is cool. So we're gonna fast forward now to your roles. Get into General Mills now, and how was that and how you advanced there. And I guess before we get into General Mills, just real quick to kind of summarize, I know you say you're really scrappy as far as being curious, but what were some of the habits that you had formed as a professional in the beginning of your career that, allowed you to be tapped for a role, I guess promotion, I think it would be promotion that you got in DC, to head new.
Yeah, I think there were a couple of things. I think there were just some of those personal characteristics. I think my parents did a great job. My parents taught us three simple things. Work hard, treat people right, don't make excuses. And I think that's been the foundation of sort of who I am and how I try to roll. And I think also being a college athlete, you learn how to play on teams, you learn how to play under pressure, you learn how to be a good teammate, but still have high requirements of both yourself and the team as well. And so I think that kicked into my achievement orientation. And so when I found myself in tough situations, I think I proved the ability to understand them and to not only execute, but lead through them. And I think people saw that as well. Because, in business is it's tricky, as a leader, your job is to create the kind of environment for success, repeatable success. And you have to accommodate all types of peoples with all type of capabilities to be able to do that and get people focused and moving forward. And so I think I showed that kind of ability very early on. And as I got, responsibility added to me as well, then that just kicked in even more. And so I would say consistency is incredibly important. I always tell people that, being great every now and then is not the objective.
Uh-huh.
At least you want to shoot to be great all the time. Now, you won't be great all the time. Let's just be clear about that. But, your expectations should continue to, to be high. And so I think people saw that in me, and I think entrusted, larger and larger parts of the organization as a result of that. And then again, in any business, you got to get results. You got to get results more times than not. You won't be 100%. And so I think track record of performance and, as you get larger organizations, is being able to translate that to other people. So it's one thing for Anton to get results as an individual contributor. It's another thing for Anton to get results through other people and to do that on a consistent basis. So I think those are some of the characteristics that I showed early, and I think have been pretty consistent in my career as well.
Love that. Love that. Now we can fast forward to General Mills.
Yeah.
And so that is really the crux of your career before where you are now with Mars Wrigley.
Right.
And I want to just ask about that a little bit on how you navigated those roles, how you were able to keep pushing your career forward there, and what was your mindset to raise your hand for yourself?
Yeah, I think a couple of things. One, I think I came in with a very strong work ethic. And I was also fortunate to have mentors as well. I'm very big on the concept of mentorship. Very important to me in my life. I try to provide that. I've tried to provide that throughout my entire career because, many times, even if you're a very talented person, you can't see what you can't see. And you need people to sort of, it's sort of like the parental tough love, if you would. It's just like, yeah, you're good. You got some skills, but you can do this, and this better. And I think for me, I had a very sort of schizophrenic sort of relationship with feedback because I always tell people I always had a fairly healthy ego. And, so some of that's good, but some of that can work against you because you don't see the things you need to develop. And so I think I've always had people around me that sort of saw the talent, but also they sort of kept me on point. And I always focus on this idea around continuous improvement. And that's part of my athletic. I try to work on something new every year. I can get better doing something. All great athletes pick something every year they try to get great at. And so I've always tried to keep that sense around what can I work on this year? Can I present better? Can I analyze better? Can I lead my teams better? Like I try to pick one specific thing that I was trying to get deeper, bigger, and better at every year. And, if you do that over time, then you end up being a pretty well-rounded leader. And, as you start to go up the levels and your organization start to get broader, the great things about you come out, but also the things that are not so great about you come out as well. And the not so great things can have they can have a tough impact when you got big organizations under you. So I probably about midway through my career, I started to get very interested in not just self-improvement, but it's like, hey, I think I'm pretty good. I have a good track record, but how do I really take it to the next level? Right? Because, what I do, what I say, what I think, how I move impacts people. And, that starts to be a responsibility as a leader and an executive because people are depending on you. People are depending on you to make good decisions, to have good judgment, to create great teams and to perform. And I thought my mentors did a really good job in helping me to understand at every level, it's a different ballgame. And here are the things you got to sort of focus on. Here are the things you got to open your eyes to, and you got to sort of see down the road and around the corner because you become one of the few people that had that level of purview in organizations, and it's your responsibility to see that. And so I'd say I got good counseling. I would say, some of the characteristics we talked about earlier, they never go away. You are, at your core who you are. And so you got to make sure that is tight and that is consistent and that people see that sort of displayed in a very consistent way most of the time, right? So I think those are things that help me out quite a bit.
I love that. That's definitely a great gem that you just dropped. I want to getting these last couple minutes, just a lot of the times, at least what I've gathered from YouTube videos and just listening to other interviews of executives in general, and then just my mentors and people that have achieved success in the corporate workspace, is that it becomes a lot more about the soft skills and your people relationships to advance further and higher up, because it kind of is like they're starting to promote people that they know, people that they like, that they see around. And I am curious to know if you had to change, or I shouldn't say change, but just adapt, maybe include new sports. Maybe did you pick up golf so that you can get closer to, in certain circles, or, what have you. I'm just interested to know like the things that you incorporated or adapted to in order to keep advancing.
Yeah, really good question, because I know, and I'll just sort of be real here, particularly for people of color, you do sort of come to the conclusion, like, how much of me do I need to give up to go there, right? And that certainly was a question for me. I don't think I ever spazzed about it a bit. One of the things that I'm pretty focused on is just authenticity. I know how to be the best Anton I can, and I think that has certainly got me to where I am, and I think it has the potential to get me further. And I like how I've built Anton. Anton is not perfect. Let me just be clear with that. But what I try to do is to make sure that I have a level of authenticity with everybody that I deal with whoever they are. And I think people see that, whether it's the janitor or whether it's the chairman of the board, that there's a level of authenticity that's coming around. And I think I have developed a reputation, for being locked into people at all levels and being able to relate. But you're right. As you go up, don't get me wrong. I always tell people, the soft skills matter, the relationships matter. There's no doubt about that. That's natural evolution, but you're still accountable for results. And that's the one thing that sits on you, is you become a little further away from the business. You start to process the business a little differently because you're working through other very talented people. But at the same time, you have to be able to look at an enterprise view and understand how to move the enterprise forward, across all of its segments. And so you do have to have a level of focus and level of insight and a level of connectivity with people that's going to allow that to happen. Because, whether you want to be or not, you're seen as a leader. People see you. People are sometimes hanging your every word, and you want to be authentic, but you want to be precise in terms of what you're articulating as well. And so that takes a lot of intentionality. But that intentionality has to be communicated in very authentic ways. And then I think that's the thing that I try to do. Now, as it relates to the golf question, that one always comes up. I don't play golf. And it's not because I think golf is a beautiful game. I just never have had the time to pick it up. I have friends who love it. They get into it. And that's a beautiful thing. And I understand what that can offer you, just, from a relationship perspective. But I'm here to tell you that it's not necessary to learn how to play golf to sort of, continue to sort of move up the corporate ladder. What is important is that you bring your best self to work every day, and that people see that, and that people feel that, and that your authenticity is penetrating people in a way that they can believe you, and that you can have followership as a leader. That's what's most important. People are not going to look up to see if what your golf handicap is to figure out if they're going to follow you or not. What they're going to do is like, do I believe this person? Do I trust this person? Does this person have a track record? And would I go and work for this person? Because many times, and I've had to move and had the opportunity to sort of pick my teams or pick certain portions of my team, I know I probably got some of the best people because they wanted to work for me, right? Maybe not so much the business situation, but it was like, look, I want to work for Anton because I know that Anton is going to set the kind of environment that's going to allow me to flourish. It's going to give me the opportunity to put points on the board and going to hold me accountable. And I think most people who are achievement oriented want that. They want that opportunity, want that responsibility.
Mm-hmm. Now I know we're a little over, so
I got time, so that's good.
Okay, I'm like, I want to be respectful of your time. I was trying to fit in all the questions I could.
Oh no, I got time. Now we can keep going. I got another 30 minutes, so we're good.
Oh, excellent. Let me get into it.
I'll let you in.
Excellent. Okay, cool. Well, then I want to go back to General Mills. Yes. And going back to why you transitioned, because you had you have an excellent career, lots of experiences there. And I'm always interested when I see, even myself, when I started, I work for Deloitte Consulting, and So, when I came in, I had mentors, I had, kind of folks that just brought me in under them, and they were in leadership roles. And then they like left. A lot of them left like after my first or second year. And I was really sad because I'm like, oh man, I built like such a great relationship with them. And I'm like, and they're doing so well. Everyone loves them here. Why leave? And so I'm always curious. Oh my gosh. And I don't know if you can hear that. I'm so sorry in the background.
No, I'm good.
But I was always curious as to what would make you leave, and also what was kind of your mindset on the transition. Was it intentional as far as you just wanted to move maybe geographically? Was it because you wanted to try a new company? You just felt like, hey, I need something fresh, something new. Or was it, as I've seen in other stories of Black executives, as, okay, yeah, they looked me over for something and now it's time to go. So what was that?
No, a really good question. First of all, I had a wonderful career at General Mills. I was there for 23 years. And, I far exceeded my shelf life, I think, from being in one company at one time. And I never would have imagined that when I first started. But I think it was a couple of things. One, you're going to always sort of get to those points where, do I see my longevity the same way that my company sees my longevity in terms of, sort of being part of leadership, so on and so forth. At that time I'd run 3 big divisions. All my contemporaries, we were all running the company jointly. And, it gets very narrow at the top. At some point, there's not a checkerboard. There's like a diamond, right? And there's only one person who's going to sit on top of that diamond, for some time, called the CEO and chairman. And I think in our case, I think we jointly came to the conclusion that, okay, look, Anton, I don't know if there's a lot of more runway for you at General Mills. And, I continue to be highly achievement oriented and continue to sort of feel like I have a lot of opportunity. And so, we made a decision that it was time to, sort of took time to part company. And it was a tough one. I think it was a tough one for the company, tough one for me. But, sometimes you come to decisions in your career where, it's clear it's time to move on. And I think that was the case at General Mills. But, when I look back on my experience, I had a fantastic career, and I think I left my imprint on General Mills in many ways, not just business results, but in sort of what we're doing with the community, with the Black community, with the community of General Mills at large. General Mills is a very purpose-driven company. And, a lot of us were very, very much a part of that as well. And so I look back on my experience with gratefulness, with pride. And I know I can point to things that I say, okay, well, if Anton had not been there, this would not have happened. And so I take those experiences with me, wherever I go as well. And on to the next challenge, on to the next opportunity.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that you mentioned that because, of course, now I'm a cusp Gen Z millennial cusp. I'm 95. So a lot of us, we're already looking like 20 years ahead.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Year one.
Right.
So that's something that you said, I know. You got some mentees that are like,
I got a few. Yeah.
Yeah, because we're very like, all right, I think I'm ready.
Right.
So it's interesting to me always, and especially in this podcast, just hearing the stories of executives and how you do make those tough decisions and, those career pivots. And so, thinking of stuff that you took into consideration is important to me, just to visualize and also understand better what it means to be a leader of a huge organization and all the different factors you do kind of have to consider when you make a shift like that.
Right.
So that's interesting. I want to go back to a point you made about authenticity and discuss a little bit about how do you incorporate yourself at work, and what are the things that you are intentional about sharing or making sure that people know about you, maybe some things that they wouldn't necessarily know usually. Just would love for you to share that.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think one of the things that I try and do is I try and meet and connect with as many associates as possible. I think that's really important because sometimes when you get on top of organizations, there can be such distance between you and the organization. And I've always tried to what I call sort of cut down that distance. I'll just give an example. When I first came to Mars, I literally spent my first 6 months just traveling to plants. That's literally all I did was travel to plants because, we have a lot of folks in our organization, over 7,000 in North America, but, the majority of those people are inside of plants making products. right? And so it was important for me, for somebody that didn't grow up at Mars. I wanted to be able to learn the business from the ground up and to learn not just physically how it's made, city facilities, but also sort of meet and connect with the associates, because they're not sitting in an office in meetings every day. They're on a line, they're on a shift, they're doing something, they're doing something very specific for a very specific point in time. And it was important for me to do that. So I would say that that's just that concept of connection has always been something that I've been very intentional about. I mean, I literally was scheduling on my calendar, because I think it's important. And I think when you're leading, particularly leading large organizations, you have to be intentional about it, because you can create separation from you and them. And you don't want that. You don't even want there to be a you and them, right? We're all associates, we're all on the same page, and we're all trying to hit the same objectives. And for the most part, we're all believe in a value system in terms of how we do that. So that's the one thing that I do as well. I mean, the other thing, and this is, probably typical big company stuff, but, we do a fair amount of town halls, because our people are spread all throughout North America. And so just ensuring that people sort of see you, understand you, hear the words from your mouth, and make yourself available to as many people as possible. I think those are sort of the two key things that I do as well. Now, I will say, particularly for our office-based employees, we're fortunate to have a pretty strong, what we call ARG, or Associate Resource Group network. And I make sure that I attend those events, that I'm visible, that I'm supportive, and that people know that it's important to me as a leader, and making sure that we have not just the infrastructure, but the funding and the commitment where people can be available to not just lead, but participate in activities for all associates. And typically ARGs are focused towards a certain group of associates, but they're very transparent activities where we really invite all the associates in as well. And so I think I'm very, very intentional about making sure that I'm present, that I'm visible, and that people know that is important to me as a leader and important to us as an organization.
Mm-hmm. Now I want to go off of that with you saying being present, and want to ask a question about presenting yourself. And, of course, now things are virtual, but, I'm sure they will go back to in-person, if not a hybrid of in-person virtual, because, we're humans, we love social connection. So curious on your thoughts. I know I've heard that you have a shoe collection, an amazing,
You've been talking to some people that made a little bit too much about it.
So I want to ask, about your thoughts on that. And I didn't ask this in the beginning, but one of the fast round questions that I have asked to other guests is square toe or round toe loafers. And so, what's your preference there?
I'm thinking more round toe.
Okay.
More round toe.
And what
this year I'm more round toe. Now, ask me next year. I might switch it up on you.
Okay. Love that. Now, coming up on general advice for presenting yourself, how do you think that's come into play? Being as though, from what I get from you, is that's something you care about, that's something you take time to put in effort to. And I think that's something that's culturally Black as well, as far as how we present ourselves, period, but especially in a corporate space. I think we do all kind of take an extra efforts into it. And so what I guess are your guidelines for how we can do that, but maybe not be over the top? Because sometimes I know my peers, and I know I've been in a situation where I'm wearing a strict business casual and folks are really relaxed, and I'm just I can't even bring myself to be as relaxed as the people around me, because I was starting to feel uncomfortable. And it's just, maybe because of that double mind, me thinking if I wear t-shirts, now I'm looking I don't care, or I don't know. So it's just I feel I have to be suited and booted all the time. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, first I'll tell you, that's a really, really good question, because when I talk to people, I'm very serious about this. I do think, let's just be real, as African Americans, and many of us are sort of first generation corporate people, right? We don't have a lot of playbooks around how to do this. I always tell people, look, a lot of times this stuff is in our own head, right? A lot of times you're okay, well, look, back to your point. If I'm suited and booted and somebody else is there, I think, and I say, look, every organization has a norm. So I think you want to be within the norm, that's for sure. But we shouldn't feel any unusual burden to be any unusual way, right? And what I mean is, it's like, okay, well, look, if the norm is like this, and as long as I'm within the norm, you should feel comfortable, sort of being within the norm and not having to do something that separates you to give you legitimacy. Because I think at the end of the day, that I think this is Anton's point of view. That's what we're sort of saying. Look, okay, look, I'm an African American person. I'm in this environment, but your point, I'm going to be suited and booted so you can feel that I belong here. And I'm just like, that's interesting. I'm just saying that's just not necessary. So I never counsel people to sort of do that. I do think you want to understand. I always say, look, understand what the dress code is, understand what the environment, and understand what the range of flexibility is around that. But don't feel the need to be terrifically different, because I just don't think it's necessary. And I don't think we do ourselves any favors, to be honest with you, to do that as well. And again, I go back to my thoughts that sometimes a lot of this stuff is in our own heads. And I always tell people are not focusing on you as much as you might believe. No, it's just like, I mean, they focus on you because you're an employee and what you're there, so on and so forth. But sometimes, especially a person with other persuasions, is just not going the extra step that you might think for you to sort of go and sort of, in this case, dress differently, so on and so forth. So I always say, look, you want to be yourself. You want to be authentic. And most companies, especially great companies, they recruited you because of you, not because they're sort of saying, I want you to be in a certain zone. They're saying, no, I want you because you're you, and I want that in my company because I want you to put that to work for me, and and for our interests as well. And so, you want to bring your authenticity to work. You want to bring your uniqueness to work because that's what makes you you, and that's what's going to make that work environment that much better. Because again, this is why companies recruited you because of you, who you are, what you've accomplished, and clearly you have done that, and you show potential, and they want you to do that at their organization. So do that, be about you, and and I think I always tell people, you don't want to have extra energy in not being you because it's tiring. You come home, you're tired. You can hardly look at yourself in the mirror because you've been pretending to be something else. And, you've been extending that extra energy in many cases unnecessarily. So I say, I don't think that's actually necessary. Know the dress code, understand sort of what those edges are, but don't think that there's an extra burden on you because you're a person of color to be a certain way so you can have more legitimacy. Because if you do feel that way enough, you might need to question whether you need to be at that company or not. Right.
Yeah, no, that's excellent advice. Again, diamonds were dropping.
No, I'm just
I got my jewelry box. I got my jewelry box.
Oh, I got to use that one, Ted.
I've been collecting. I
got to use that one.
Yes, thank you for dropping those. Yeah, that's a great perspective. Yeah, up here and we were discussing that because I do these Instagram chats chats on Instagram with my peers. And so we were discussing that amongst ourselves, in our welcome classes, folks have like shorts on, just relaxing. And we're just still like in polos and like khakis and just feel too awkward. I don't know, like, can I do it? It's hard to break out of that mindset.
No, I think it's hard. And I think the thing about it is, because I always try to have these very conversations with some of my majority colleagues. And it's just, and I would tell you, the majority of them are like, wow, I would never even think twice about that. Like, I would never even think that people are going through all of that mental exercise around, okay, I'm going to look this way, so you can feel better about me being here. Kind of thing. So that's why I say you'd be surprised that people may not be as locked in on that as possible. And again, I go back to my whole thing. That organization recruited you because of you, because of your uniqueness. And I think it's your responsibility to bring that uniqueness every day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, going deeper into your uniqueness, and as I think we all try to craft our how I shouldn't say, I know we're saying like how much you have to give up to be here, but less of that and more of, I think the question for myself and one that my peers and I will ask is, how authentic can I be? Because I'm myself, but I may not be my full self here, but I am myself. It's not that I'm being someone else. It's just that like I'll cut off to an extent, And so, and also like imbalance and mental wellness and all of those things. What are some things that like you don't compromise on, and how do you voice, raise your hand to say, hey, yeah, I need this day, or I need this time, or, this is how I'm going to do things how do you voice those preferences for your lifestyle and being a leader? Because, I'm sure the company and other organizations and people just pull you every direction. So how do you stand firm in who you are as far as like what you're going to do and what, you're not going to do in a respectful way?
Yeah, no, definitely respect my mind. I think, I think for leaders, it might be a little easier because a lot of us have, orientations and those type of things where, people are naturally asking those questions about you, and you can sort of set the table around, all right, look, here's Anton, here's who I am, here's how I roll, basically. But I think a couple of things for me, the first thing to do is I always let people know, look, I'm a family man. Like I have a loving wife, I have 3 kids. And that's incredibly important to me. And I recognize that I can't always have that balance, but my first priority is to have that balance. And so that's first and foremost. People understand that. So especially with my colleagues and my partners, I was like, look, I don't do late night dinners. I was like, if we're going to do dinner, that's fine, but it needs to be early, right? It needs to be more like 6 o'clock, not 8 o'clock, because I need to be home. I'm not a late night person. I need my sleep. I work out in the morning. I'm a morning person. And so I orientate my life around how my body and my mentality work best, right? And for me, that's going to bed early and rising early, because oftentimes the only time I have to myself is early in the morning, because, once I hit a video or hit a physical meeting, I'm in meetings all day, right? And so I think it's those things that you can sort of let people know up front. Sort of, I always tell people, this is how I work. This is how I'm effective for you, as your leader. And so just allow me to do that. Now, will I deviate from that time to time? Of course I will. But what I try to do is to make sure that people understand, like, hey, look, this is how I try to live my life, and this is how I try to create access for me, my own mental time, and my access for my associates and my teams as well. And so I would say communication is key. Transparency is key. Letting people know what you're about and how you try to roll. Now, I think just the second thing for me is I always try to let people know that, look, the biggest part of my job is to make sure that you are successful. Right. And I mean it as an individual, and I mean it as teams and as organizations. And that's the biggest, that's one of the biggest parts of my job. And so just making sure that people are, hey, look, if you need me, I always give people a code word, say, Anton, I know you're busy, but they'll say the code word. I'm like, all right, I got it. I'll get out of a meeting or I'll reschedule the meetings. I'm just like, if they say the code word, I know they need me like really, 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 really bad. And so it's little techniques like that. And just to let people know that I understand what my role is. I understand what my role is as it relates to you and your success. And so I'm very focused on making sure people understand that I am not just a boss, but my opinion and my energy is focused on your success. It's very important for me to help people to understand that, and they need to be able to see that and see that how I try to execute that over time. I think it's pretty significant for me. So I think those are two of the big ways that I do it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, I do want to now go into your role with International Paper and the board, and get into why was that important for you to, obtain a board seat, if that was a goal of yours, and how did you go about doing that? Because I hear that, I read these articles and it's very celebrated, and, there's like a push for more Black professionals to, be in board seats. And I'm always like, well, what's the importance in that? And what is that? And what is the impact? And, how does that reverberate? Because it is a big emphasis. And I'm always like, okay, when I was, my outlook has always just been like, oh, the C-level officers, that's what I mostly see. But it's this, I guess, behind the scenes board of directors that also has great impact. So just curious as to, how you set that as a goal, and, why International Paper and things of that nature.
Yeah, so I think a couple of things. I've had the fortune of being on a fair amount of nonprofit boards, school boards, things of that nature. And so, boards play a very specific role in an organization. And then primarily it's around governance, supporting sort of the executive team, and really making sure that the long-term future of the organization is always top of mind. You hire management or leadership to run the company, to operate the company, but the board's role is to support that, but also sort of make sure that we're doing it the right way. We're doing it within the confines of our value systems, but also that we are creating room for us to operate well into the future. So by design, it is a governance and long-term oriented exercise, for a board. And that goes for public company boards as well. A big part of our job is to make sure to report that we support the chairman and the CEO, that we give good governance around, running the enterprise, and making sure that this company, will always tell people to make sure it's around 100 years from now, right? So it's the long-term longevity of it. But specifically as well, I think one of the things that really, intrigued me is I spent a good chunk of my life, presenting to boards and sort of, fielding those questions and making sure that I'm getting them structured around what me as management is doing to make sure, A, that we're hitting today's goals and that we have an eye in terms of how we're going to hit those goals into the future as well. So I've always been interested in being on the other side of that, and helping to shape that and helping to, again, support leadership and making sure we're moving forward. And so I would say a public board was just like a next natural step for me. I continue to be ambitious. I want to be, a true CEO one day, and having board experience would be incredibly important to that because that board would be my boss in addition to shareholders. But, the board technically is sort of the CEO's boss, but they're also there to support. And there to support and to represent shareholders as well. Because, we have a fiduciary responsibility, and that includes making sure we got the right management at the table, that management is running the business in such a way that's consistent, again, with the values and has a very long-term view of it as well. So I think it's important to understand that governance and long-term role. I think that actually makes me a better executive as well. And so I see them sort of informing one another. And so IP in particular, one of the beautiful things I liked about IP is, it's a business I understand. That's number one. But also, it's a big business. It's a global business. They're doing things in parts of the world that are incredibly interesting. Really love the CEO, love the board, love how the board has really a set of principles around how the board works, which was really important for me. Obviously very accomplished, very tenured people, from all walks of life, coming together on, to support, in this case, an executive team and a set of shareholders. So really liked IP, really liked the growth prospects. It is a bit tangential to what I do, but they sort of support the CPG business because of all the things they provide. And it was important for me to understand how to do that. And so it's a new experience, but it's a really good experience. Really sharp board, really sharp chairman and CEO, really sharp. We have a lead director model as well. So Eileen, who's very focused, sits on other boards, has been a past CEO. And so I just thought the construct of the board and where it was, how the board was evolving and how that board was evolving with how the strategy in the company is evolving as well. So I thought it was a really good entry point for me to come and to to learn, and then B, progressively be a part of, how the business is structured and how it moves over time.
Now, you didn't apply for that seat, correct? So how was that process? Is that the sponsorship part of things?
There's a couple of ways in terms of which boards sort of source directors. One, some use search firms, but most people won't believe this, but there's actually a fairly small percentage of board seats that are sourced through search firms. But a lot of it is sort of relationships. If boards are doing their jobs, they're always keeping eyes on executives across a variety of industries around. Wow, one day that person could be a good board member. So they do a really good job of sort of keeping track of not just who's hot, but what's the type of leader we want around this table. That's very important. That's one. Second thing is, and this is just the importance of networking, because look, we all have our bastions of network and so on and so forth, but you just never know. You never know who knows who's on a board, who might be looking for things. Like you said, these aren't advertised board seats. Right. But if you're a good board, you're always looking at, how do I want to continue to diversify this board in every sense of the word, from a talent, from a regionality, from a diversity perspective. That is always sort of an ongoing exercise. So it's important that if you have interest, that people know. It's also important that if you're sort of saying, I want to be on a board one day, what does it take? What do boards look for? Make sure you have those conversations either with board members you may know. You may know people at search firms. But in general, the idea of a board is to get the most diverse people around the table to give counsel and to govern, and you sort of move the long-term interests of the business forward, with a certain value system as well. And so you need, again, diversity defined as big D to do that. And it's very important. And I think those companies who know that and who do it well, you can see it sort of replicate in its business results as well. So it's just important that you sort of keep your nose to the head ground on that. But I thought, just as a senior executive, it's very important for me to have that experience. And I would tell you, like I said earlier, I think it's made me a better leader in understanding, what not just what boards look for, but the long-term nature of it is just really, really important. It helps put my decision making in a much stronger context, I think, from that point.
Yeah. Now, I'll just close it out quickly with a legacy question and what you hope your legacy to be and what you're currently building as your legacy. I know you have lots that you've already laid down as a foundation for who you are, but just curious to know if you have any further thoughts on your legacy.
Yeah, good question. For much of my professional career, I've always just invested in people. I've invested in primarily young people. It's important for me to, we talked about it earlier, particularly as African Americans. This is our first go around in corporate America for the most part. We don't have generations of people who've been corporate executives and things of that nature. I'm hopeful at some point that day it becomes that way, but it's not. And so my legacy is making sure that I'm touching as many people as possible. And I'm trying to be not just a positive role model, but an active role model. I want to insert myself in a way where we get results, right? We talk about wanting to do this and do that. I'm like, all right, where's the plan? Talk to me about how to get there. What are the experiences necessary? And then back to some of the questions we talked about. How do you maintain yourself during your journey? What you don't want to do is to get at the end of your journey. It's like, wow, okay, I did it, but I feel empty, right? And so I try to make sure that it's a holistic approach. I try to give hope and inspiration. I try to continue to do my job well. So I'm in a position to do that. And people see that it can be done. It can be done over a long period of time. And, just generally trying to be a positive force. That's just really, really important to me. It's very important to me, not just to myself, but to my children and to my own family's legacy as well. And so I believe that you get back what you put out into the world. I'm a firm believer in that. And so I know at some point that impacts me, hopefully it impacts my family and, people that are near and dear to me as well.
Well, thank you so much, Anton, for your time today. You definitely dropped, like I said, gems throughout the entire episode. My jewelry box is now full.
It's full. All right.
It's full. I got to make room for the next conversation.
All right.
Yeah.
No, we're getting a jewelry box.
Yeah, jewelry box. Right. Yeah. This was a great conversation. So I appreciate you spending time with us today. And definitely giving a lot of wisdom and advice and encouragement to professionals, but also especially Black professionals with your experience. So I appreciate it.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I know it's a relatively new podcast, so just best of luck. And I'll certainly tell my friends about it and to make sure that you continue to have good guests.
Yes. Oh, no, for sure. I will definitely be in those LinkedIn connections.
I know you will, Taylor.
Thank you again.
Yeah.
All righty.